Hi, my name is Donna Henusay. I'm the project manager on the National Applied Research Project that studied RFID systems, installation, and implementation at auction markets and buying stations across Canada from 2009 to 2011. The pilot project had two phases. Phase 1, having 8 test sites, and really a proof of concept on the hardware to see how effectively it worked and whether it impeded speed of commerce. We scanned 144,000 head of cattle in over 32,000 groups. Phase 2, with 13 test sites, and it integrated the RFID hardware in with the software to ensure that it linked with the management and networked with management systems. It recorded the tag numbers and ensured that those tag numbers were available on settlement documentation for both the consignor and the buyer. We scanned over almost 394,000 head of cattle in over 107,000 groups. So in total, there was 537,000 cattle in 139,000 groups scanned. From that experience, we developed these recommendations that we're presenting to you today. So our test site configurations, we had 3 systems before the sale ring, 3 systems after the sale ring, 4 at receiving, 3 at buying stations and assembly yards, all those systems at receiving, and 4 sites had multiple systems, meaning some on intake chutes coupled with dual alley systems or wide alley systems. We used 3 manufacturers, and the systems we used were single, wide, and dual alley systems in various configurations. So what is an RFID system? It is effectively a package and a combination of things. It is hardware panels with antennas that are attached to a scanning alley. These then record the tag number and send them up to a reader box. That reader box then transfers that number into software that is housed in a data entry device, and then there is a report created from those numbers and submitted to the CLTS. So it is a full package of things that makes up an RFID system. So just as an introduction, some key factors to consider that I'm going to talk about today are no 2 facilities handle cattle in the same manner. What worked for your neighbor is not necessarily going to work for you. The hardware must be placed in line with your business process in order to not affect your speed of commerce. And the type of software to record the data must be chosen before your hardware. And also, project management is a key factor to overseeing your hardware and software installation to eliminate many issues. Finally, and the most important factor, is site assessments are critical by both your hardware and your software vendors. The timing of your installation should be scheduled for slow periods, the middle of May and June, or maybe the middle of January. In Phase 1, we installed the systems over the summer and therefore did not impede fall run. However, in Phase 2, we started to install in July and August, but ran into September and October and affected efficiency and effectiveness of the markets while they were with fall run. It's also important to install during your slow times to ensure that your site personnel are properly trained on the hardware and software and that you've got time to do that. That if you need to recruit new personnel, you've got time to do that. And also to work out any small bugs or technical issues that may be created by the hardware and the software. So when you're looking at your recording software, the choice is fully dependent on the level of functionality that's required. In Phase 1, we tested a standalone system that bypasses your management system. It is not integrated through your network or into any of your management software. That worked very effectively. It stood alone, and it was very cost effective and labor effective. In Phase 2, we integrated the software into the management systems. Your cost is going to increase based on the level of integration and your level of functionality. One of the factors that we found in Phase 2 was that 2 of our markets, their computer systems were too old to network in the systems, so we had to spend over $16,000 to create new computer networks in order to enable the integration of the RFID hardware and software to be available on the settlement documentation. Further, your software may have to be customized in order to fit your business process if you're going with a full integration. So things to consider when you're looking at your software. In Phase 2 with the full integration, the test sites reported the level of technical accuracy required to operate the software as 3.5 out of 5. That is fairly high. So I'm going to recommend that the software should be operated by personnel who are comfortable with computers. Facilities with data entry at receiving certainly had more issues than those with data entry at the sale ring. That is because an already busy position, more stress is added, more things have to go on when already there's a lot of stuff happening. So it's important to note where it's going to be, who's going to use it, and what level of software you're going to use. When you're doing your software contracts with your vendors, ensure two things. One is that on-site training is provided, and two, that technical support is available. In Phase 2, most of our test sites complained that there was no on-site training. As such, they spent an extensive amount of time on technical support. These are two factors that are really critical to ensure a successful software integration. Another piece of your RFID system is your data entry device. This should be chosen based on the location of your system and what kind of software you're using. In Phase 1, we simply had a laptop operated at the location of the RFID hardware because it was a standalone, it wasn't integrated. But in Phase 2, with integration, it became more complicated. One of the things we used was a thin client with monitor. That is a $700 piece of equipment, and alone it doesn't have any functionality because it links and it networks with your main computer system. It was very functional as long as it was protected from the elements. So we had it installed in receiving booths at receiving, and that worked very well. We also used Panasonic Tough notebooks. These are advertised to work in very harsh environments, and primarily they did, except in one of our auction markets where there was 3 days of minus 32. It stopped working until we took it inside and heated it up for a day. So bear in mind the environment in which it's going to work and what you're going to require it to do. The ViewTrack DT500 will operate in any environment and is designed to work in harsh climates with lots of dust and dirt and very cold. The problem with this is it has to be customized with ViewTrack software and nothing else can run on it. Plus it's the most expensive at a cost of $7,900. We didn't feel that the cost outweighed any of the benefits that we saw with any of the other data entry devices. So with your RFID hardware, as I mentioned at the beginning, and I'm going to mention again because it's so important, is site assessments are absolutely critical to ensure the proper location for your RFID hardware. So many factors can come into play that you need to be working with the experts to determine the right location to minimize any electrical interference. You're going to determine if there are service technicians in your province. If your RFID system goes down, you want to make one call, have them there quickly. Plus, technicians, there's a travel cost to them. If they're close, you're going to reduce time and cost by having multiple technicians or at least a service technician in your area. I'm also going to suggest that the vendors participate in the construction of your alley. In Phase 1, we had a test site that built their own alley, but they did not build it to vendor specifications. Therefore, there was a significant amount of data collision between the panels because the alley was too narrow. If you've got a vendor participating in the construction of your alley, you're going to make sure it's built to spec for your optimum read accuracy on your RFID system. You're also going to ask the vendor to do a baseline read rate before they leave your facility. They're going to be able to tell you what the highest and what the optimum read rate is before they leave. You know that that's the baseline that you're going to work to on an ongoing basis with your hardware. So when you're doing your contracts with your hardware vendors, there's a few things that are really important. You're going to ensure that you're going to clarify the roles, the responsibilities, and the costs. Things like freight and travel on installations and on maintenance. Who's going to pay for that? Is it included in your warranty? Is it included in your installation costs? What are the vendor obligations and performance clauses? So if they walk away with a great baseline read rate, what happens if that drops? What are their obligations? What are your obligations? What things do you have to ensure that you're doing not to void a warranty and a service agreement? Further, we really recommend that extended service contracts are great for ensuring optimal ongoing performance of your systems. So we've talked about the hardware, we've talked about the software, now we're going to talk about linking the hardware and software. This sounds like it should be easy. In fact, Phase 2 identified that this was not easy based on the number of different parameters at each facility, different software, and different hardware. So we talked about this before, but your hardware vendor has got to know what's your choice of software, where it's going to be located, and what's going to be your data entry device. All of these things have to hook together in order for this to be successful. So in phase 2, we learned something. We had hardware installed, it's working perfectly. We've got software installed, it's all set up, it's all ready to go. All of a sudden we realized these two are not linked. This is not a piece of the installation that's owned by either your hardware vendor or your software vendor. It's a piece that came in the middle but requires extensive Cat5 cabling. It requires the use of digiboxes and network links. You've got to pull these two together, and it's not easy. They're two different languages. They're talking about different things. Without project management, this piece would have fallen through the cracks. It's my recommendation to you that the hardware vendors own this piece. If the software goes in first, the hardware vendors can come in, link the whole thing together, tie their hardware into the software and into the data entry device, and ensure it works effectively. So the final recommendation is linking the hardware and software with cables, network boxers, and adapters should be done by your hardware vendor in consultation with your software vendor, and that cost must be included in an installation cost by your hardware vendor. I also discussed project management in my opening. Without one person managing your full installation, things are going to fall through the cracks. If you've got either a third party or your software vendor or your hardware vendor managing the entire project, you're going to ensure that it's a smooth integration, it's a smooth implementation, and it's a smooth installation, that the little tiny things are worked out, somebody's paying attention to the big picture. So the hardware system's installed, the software's working, it's all linked together, it's working efficiently. What now? You are now going to operationalize that RFID system. In order for RFID systems to be effective in support of traceability, there must be a commitment from the site to ensure that those systems are continually operating at the highest and best. You should train 1 or 2 people on both the hardware and the software and make sure that they are accountable for ensuring ongoing performance of the readers. So things to consider when you're looking at those 1 or 2 people and who you're going to train. You're going to make sure that they're fully trained on the use of the readers and the software by the vendors, so they're really cognizant and aware of how those work efficiently. They're going to conduct daily read range testing on the scaling alleys. That is as simple as taking a tag and running it up in front of the panels to determine how far out the panel's actually reading. If you're not doing that, you don't know how efficient your panel is working. To ensure the RFID hardware is functioning to the highest level and that the readers in the alleys are always maintained. That requires rebooting, it requires retuning. It's just ongoing maintenance before scanning days to make sure that those readers are operating at their optimum efficiency on scanning days. They're going to have to evaluate the reports that come out of the software to see what the read accuracy is doing. If you've been running about 98 to 100% and all of a sudden it drops to 80, something's wrong. They're not going to know that unless they were looking at the reports, monitoring and evaluating how the systems are working. They're also going to want to report any inaccurate reads or any inconsistencies to the vendors so they can work with the vendor to troubleshoot and ensure that the systems are working to its optimum peak. So effectively, the bottom line is these people should be evaluating the RFID system integration with business process to determine if there's a more effective way of scanning. Do you have to tweak something? Do you have to change a little bit of something in order to continue to increase your read accuracy and your efficiency of the systems? So an integration of an RFID system into a business process is going to have more impact on some businesses than it is on others. But all businesses are going to affect some degree of change with an implementation of a new process like an RFID system. So in summary, a commitment from the facility and the personnel is required in order to have a successful installation and operation of any RFID system, regardless of the combination. Without a dedicated resource looking after the system, it will not function to its highest and best on a continual basis. There is value in traceability, but it requires time, attention, and resources in order to make it functional. So I thank you for your attention. I hope this has provided some value for you. This data was taken out of the 2 research reports that were done on the RFID process. These are available at the Canadian Cattle Identification website and the Livestock Markets Association of Canada website under Research Reports. Thank you again. I'm Donna Haney.